It's the 23rd day of February. I'm your host tonight, Dana Durnford. Somewhere. That's not what we're looking for. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. You can call me the Gamma Ghost, and you can call it 709-589-4406. We are live. We do these shows live, so you can understand this is a urgent and present danger to all species. You are not immune to radiation. You are, and your loved ones and the species have no autoimmune defense against radioactive fallout, and we have been assaulted for 80 years straight. That's why you see the species die off symmetrically around the entire planet. The site is no nuclear at Fukushima, has no academics, no nuclear scientists, no institutions, no nuclear corporations. It's the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society. Your media has forsaken you. They have done everything they can to make sure you cannot be educated on this subject. They have went to war against you, and I am gone to war against them. This is just a fraction of the propaganda. Spider-Man and the Hulk and the Simpsons have been used to desensitize you. I'm shocked at how many people reject that they have been manipulated, have been socially engineered. It's shocking. You kind of lose faith in humanity when you see people incapable of understanding something so simple. It's not bad enough to grow food in the worst nuclear wasteland in history. They're growing it right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. You need to wake up. You need to fight back. You need to make Earth's last stand. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. All 11 of you. Again, just give me one moment. The external. I don't understand why we're doing that again tonight. I'll try again. I can't bring the poll up because I don't know. I'll have to deal with it next time. I'll get ahead of it. I thought it was there. So you can see the poll yourself. Is letting pro-nuclear tell lies that kill, maim hundreds of millions of people yearly? Because radiation fallout causes up to 1,800 diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries, not just cancer. Is that protected under free speech? And it's not. If I yell fire in the theater and your loved ones get stamped to death, is that free speech? Of course not. The Checks and Balances, which is a corporation, and they're pro-nuclear. Their job is to promote nuclear, not to be an actual checks and balance, despite the fact that's what your media has told you for your entire existence. Atoms for Humanity. The A-10 Warthog only shoots dirty bombs. All it shoots is dirty bombs. And you glorified that? You refuse to speak out about that? Where are your priorities? The food was banned in Japan by 55 countries, not just the Fukushima prefecture. But 14 prefectures, almost half the country because they're the big prefectures. Fukushima itself was the breadbasket of Asia. So imagine what all the prefectures you see that were banned by 55 countries, but not by Canada. You have been socially engineered to ignore the danger, and it's easy to break that bond. Reactor 3 and 4 actually don't even exist. But yet the media is pretending they're in a building that don't exist. That was Reactor 4. That was BBC, for instance. Pretending they're at the top of the building that doesn't even exist in Japan. Do you think they're doing that because they're bored? Or do you think there's something much more sinister happening? Because that's exactly what's happening. There was multiple reactors. The top of each building was 2 fuel pools with 4 decades of reactor cores. Chernobyl didn't have those fuel pools. It was a new reactor. But if you go look up officially, Chernobyl is the world's worst nuclear accident. That's in order so you don't comprehend the danger, the catastrophic danger the planet and the species are now facing. We are facing an extinction event. They are exterminating you. You need to get your act together. You need to smarten up and get educated. It's time to stop playing games. It's time to hold evil accountable. You can't be eating food from Japan or Canada. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. That's the stump of Reactor 3. Yet they're pretending they're in the fuel pool that don't even exist. The building doesn't exist. It was originally 190 feet tall. There's only a stump left. These pillars you're looking at, you can turn an SUV around on them. They're actually that big. But yet, officially, they're pretending they're on top of a building that don't even exist. And the media has perpetrated that lie upon you. You are in danger.
Now, reports suggest that the reactors at the Fukushima plant were damaged by the initial earthquake and not the tsunami wave. Well, given that earthquakes are commonplace in Japan.
So Reactor 1, for instance, started melting down before the tsunami got there. In other words, an earthquake can take out a nuclear power plant and wreck your planet, let alone your country. David Suzuki said that if Reactor 4 collapsed, this is what it actually looks like, but that's the fake picture over there. If it actually collapsed, you should evacuate the coastline of the northern hemisphere. That includes Canada. Do you really think that because you can't see it or smell it or hear it or feel it or taste it or touch it, that is not going to affect you and your loved ones? And that children are 4 times more vulnerable, the females rather of children of all species are 4 times more vulnerable than males. Do you know what happens when you remove the female production of the planet? It's Suzuki in his own words.
3 out of the 4 plants were destroyed in the earthquake and in the tsunami. The 4th one has been so badly damaged that the fear is if there's another earthquake of a 7 or above, that building will go, and then all hell breaks loose. I have seen a paper which says that if, in fact, the 4th plant goes under an earthquake and those rods are exposed, it's bye-bye Japan, and everybody on the west coast of North America should evacuate. Now, if that isn't terrifying, I don't know what. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine.
I'm going to turn that up. I had it down. I was fixing the external. My apologies. Do it one more time.
3 out of the 4 plants were destroyed in the earthquake and in the tsunami. The 4th one has been so badly damaged that the fear is if there's another earthquake of a 7 or above, that building will go, and then all hell breaks loose. I have seen a paper which says that if, in fact, the 4th plant goes under an earthquake and those rods are exposed, it's bye-bye Japan, and everybody on the west coast of North America should evacuate. Now, if that isn't terrifying, I don't know what. Fukushima is the most terrifying situation I can imagine.
So, like, we've showed you so many people trying to warn you originally, but they've been silenced or silenced themselves after. We got a poll up tonight. These 2 comments were left several hours ago, but they're not on your front page anymore. YouTube, Google removes them after a couple hours before the show starts. We got 27% of stupid people tonight, and the rest got the right answer. 73% understood. Is letting pro-nuclear tell lies that kill and maim hundreds of millions yearly protected under free speech? The obvious answer is no. Only a moron would vote yes. I'm sure 1 or 2 people might have accidentally voted yes, at least I hope, but you have to be an incredible moron to vote yes to that question. You literally got to be a scumbag to vote yes. The radioactive fallout has already polluted the entire planet, let alone the Pacific Ocean. That's a model from a German Institute of the Radiation Dispersion. Now, the problem with the model, because it was based on 6 years, is that the airborne radioactive fallout covered the entire planet. This model is 19.5 days, 486 hours. The plume is a continuous plume covering the entire planet at the one time. So imagine a snowstorm covering the entire planet at the one time. David Suzuki said, if this building collapsed, well, look at it. It collapsed. It's collapsed. They built this contraption, offsite, brought it in there, and then pretended it looked like the depiction to the left. Which, of course, that's the cover story. That's the deceit. That's the deception. That's the lies. That's the manipulation. I got to do this the hard way. We're almost through the introduction. You see the debris hanging out of this stump? And this is a lethal dose. You can't be there. So why is worldwide all the media pretending they're at the top of a building that don't exist? How come that doesn't frighten the living shit out of you? I don't understand that. And the terrifying thing is you're not going to find another person on the entire planet, not one single person, out of 8 billion people, saying, why are they pretending they're on a building that don't exist? So apparently I'm crazy because I'm the only person that's asking the question. So obviously I'm a moron. By the way, each of the buildings in comparison to Chernobyl,
the fact that the reactor in Japan is 100 times more powerful than the one in Chernobyl, and
each of these were 100 times, not counting the fuel pools, the reactors. Chernobyl was graphite mostly. These are pure uranium, pure plutonium. Well, they were. So they faked reactor 4. They faked reactor 3. They put covers on it and pretend that everything is hunky-dory. And the world media participated in that lie. 2 years ago, let me get it away for 1 second. I think that's NBC, is it? I can't remember. Does that look like a 190-foot tall building right here? Because that's the stump of reactor 4. Does that look like it's 190 feet tall to you? Well, there we go. Okay, so we got home Sunday. Got out Saturday night from the hospital. Got home on Sunday. We done a show Sunday night just to say, hey, you know, I'm back after 3 weeks in ICU. And we took 4 days off. And it's starting to hit me now, you know, my body is saying, hey, you know what I mean, right? It catches up on you. The adrenaline wears off, and then reality sets in, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I should say. So we're going to try to cover a bunch of headlines trying to get back into the program. We're getting there. We're doing way better. I'm not going to say every day I feel a little better, because that wouldn't be honest. But I feel okay, right? I do know I got a long recovery. And I do know I got no choice but to be here to fight back, because we don't have a true resistance. And the censorship against me is fairly obvious, if you're honest, right? Let's keep her moving forward. The desperation of the poll tonight is really something, isn't it? How desperate are they to vote the opposite of reality? And how cowardly, what a cowardly thing to do. What an incredible cowardly thing to do, to come and attack me with 23 people on my show. I can't even have a conversation without being attacked by the nuclear industry. They're that afraid their loved ones and families will find out what they're actually like. So, United Kingdom last year, Boris Johnson, before he was removed as the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, helped remove all restrictions on food from the nuclear wasteland. And the sad part of that story was 2 years before he removed restrictions. And we got Gar calling in. Hi, Gar.
How you doing?
I had better days.
We on the air there?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyways, have you ever, took your Geiger counter or whatever up to somebody that's, gone in for some medical imaging or something?
No.
You ever know of anybody that did?
I don't, actually. Did you do it?
Well, oh, sure. Yeah, I might have just donated myself to science here. But anyways, the usual checkups. Of course, it wasn't usual for me. It's like the first one I remember having like that. But, to look at your heart and stuff, make sure it's still good.
Yeah.
They use technetium.
Right? 99. Yeah, technetium 99, right?
Yeah. But anyways, I had that done, and I thought, well, I'll click on my Geiger counter and thinking I wouldn't even maybe get a few ticks.
Yeah.
You want to take a wild guess? Yeah. Now, mine's a survey meter that picks up more different isotopes than your regular Geiger counter.
Which only picks up typically some gamma, yeah, for folks that are not aware. The typical, I have an inspector, but it's only going to pick up gamma. And it's not really going to pick up, it's not going to pick up much of them either. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Take a wild guess at where that instrument went. when I put it up to my chest. And
I never thought about it, so I'm kind of afraid of the answer, to tell you the truth, because that's an interesting question.
Yeah, I'm not putting you guys on.
Okay.
That thing, when I turned it on, I thought, what the hell? I had to flip it up to the third highest scale, and it buried it.
No.
Past 50,000 counts per minute. That's no joke.
No. Well, you've been doing this a long time. You have your own spectrometer for folks who are not aware. You calibrate for americium and cesium yourself. You've been at this for decades. You're one of the few people.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting numbers from cereal boxes and from rainfall out. For a number of years that were just terrifying in the up to 10,000 ranges and higher for americium, for instance. And so you got a really good history, and you're telling me it's 50. You're seeing 50,000 counts per minute on the survey meter.
Right off, yeah.
Holy!
Just taking that survey meter and putting it up to me. That was yesterday. Now it's down to like 5,000-6,000.
Which is terrifying. That's a terrifying number.
Can you hear this?
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah. That's what it is. That's your survey meter.
That's a survey meter, right? I just stuck it up to my stomach. Now, can you hear it?
Yeah. No, I've been listening to it in the background. I was about to. I guessed I should have said something to the people that were tuned into the show here, but holy smokes, my friend.
I asked him, I said, did you guys accidentally put too much stuff in me? Oh, no. Of course, I'm not going to get the truth anyways.
I actually covered a lot of stories over the last decade of people that got absurd doses. And so it's starting to click in my head right now what you're talking about. And how many people gets that procedure a year? My goodness.
Yeah, now you know.
What's the half-life of technetium-99? I forget. It's a long half-life. It's a very long half-life.
Well, I read up on that, and from what I read, the half-life isn't that long, but it ends up with an isotope.
Right. That does.
Radioactive. So, but, I started drinking a lot of water and taking a few extra algae pills, for chelating it out of me. But,
holy.
Yeah, still like 6,000 a day. That was,
yeah.
Man, I had no idea I was going to do that.
I would never have guessed that. That's terrifying. Despite me covering it over years, it never clicked in for me for some reason. How you?
Yeah. You know anybody that goes in for that? See if they'll, see if you can. I'd be curious to see how it shows up on a Geiger counter, compared to a survey meter.
Yeah.
But it is gamma. So,
showing up as a gamma, it decays to a beta.
Yep. Now I've suggested people. I know there's a few people out there that have Geiger counters. I told them take one paper towel, wipe your car off after a rain.
Yeah.
And put it in, your cough medicine 30 milliliter cups.
Okay.
Put it on the top of that, right?
Yeah.
So it'll go off. You'll get a reading, and you can subtract the background, but it doesn't emit just out the top. It's coming out kind of spherical everywhere, right? Now how much do you got? Times that by 3, 4, or 5, right?
Yeah.
Wow. 30 milliliters. How many of those 30 milliliters are in a liter? It's about 33, I think.
That's right. There's 1,000. There's 1,000.
Now how much you got? So if you look at one number, well, you got to take into consideration all the sides it's blowing out of, because it's blowing out spherically.
And
then
you can't get a perfect. You can't get I didn't mean to cut you off, but you can't get a perfect reading anyway, right?
No.
So you want to multiply that. I'm sorry. Go ahead. My apologies.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. But you get a good general idea of what, because we don't drink water by the 30 milliliter thing. We typically have a pint or whatever, or maybe I should have a half a gallon a day, at least a gallon. But you can get a lot if you're drinking rainwater.
That's incredible numbers because you're not going to get the true number. On top of it, it's going to be much, like absurdly more than that on top of that. Because it's pulsing through your body to get to the Geiger counter, through the organs and everything else, right?
Yeah. And then with any sample, depending on how thick your sample is, it gets buried within it. And unshielding, to get it
it's
to
harder
release
again,
becomes
yeah. Get an accurate reading.
It's always worse. It's always worse than it looks. But I give numbers on the small side,
Yeah.
So it's worse than I'm saying. Been saying for years here.
Yeah, I seen your number there last night, and my phone's been really busy the last couple of days. I just got out of the hospital a few days back, right? And I had 3 heart attacks, and so they put 7.
Really?
Yeah, they put 7 stents in me, which is absurd.
Wow.
That's an absurd number, by the way. Probably a record around here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting all that checked out before I get any disasters. At least getting a fixed point so, if I'm around 10 years from now or whatever, I can say, when did this start? So if there's nothing here now, then I can have a starting point or do something.
Yeah, well, you got a baseline. That's terrifying baseline. Oh, my God.
Yeah, but, they wanted to look at some other things, and then they wanted to say, oh, wait, they gave me options this time, because I think they understand where I'm coming from.
I think like I covered quite a few stories where they estimated around 6% of the patients could get absurd doses. And so, like, it's because you've been speaking out for, on this show anyway for close to a decade. It wouldn't surprise me if you were targeted it, right? You know what I'm saying?
I have been.
Like, it wouldn't surprise me.
I've had computers blown up, and I lost track of how many computers I got blown up. But
I had 10 in 1 year. I don't know if you remember that. Back, I think it was 2014 or something. They killed 10 of my computers in 1 year. It's like, it's madness.
I don't know why. But with your show, if you look at the views, do you look at them because sometimes people, they'll have time the next day to look at them, or
that's right.
Days
oh yeah, no.
Show.
But
I'm thinking,
I've been here a long time, so you can go look at any other. If you go look at the average YouTuber, they get tens of thousands, and they're talking about how great they are and how many diamond rings they got and how many cars they drive. And it's totally useless stuff, right? I don't.
Yeah.
I only talk, business, right? We talk nuclear, and we're trying to help the planet and the species. We're actually. Well, I don't need to talk about it. Obviously, the average person knows. Okay, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Give us an update next week on it, will you?
Yeah.
If you get the chance, of course, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to, calibrate the spectrometer and see where it showed up with that. But I was so freaking radioactive. How would you calibrate the machine?
Well,
maybe I should have probably did it, buried the sensor and shields.
I would store some of your urine anyway, right? For future references when you can calibrate your spectrometer and double check it, right, for real numbers. With that kind, like, because it's real, right? The industry has got a long legacy of doing that to people on top of it. But there is around 6% of the people that get procedures are getting absurd doses, and they blame it on just accidents, right? We've seen this at Australia recently, actually. It was another place. Okay, my friend, anything else?
No, that'll do it. God bless, my friend.
Yeah. God bless you too, my friend.
Talk to you later.
Good to hear from you. Thank you. Yeah, bye-bye. 60,000 counts per minute, and which was gamma, and he's assuming that is technetium-99, because that's what the procedure was using, which has a 27,000-year half-life. It's got 10 half-lives. And so if everybody is excreting, or, when they die, if they're incinerated and stuff like that, this stuff is liberated into the environment. Just through that venue alone, it's a catastrophic assault upon your planet. And I see the pro-nuclear's gone nutty. Look at the votes. 40 votes. 32% says it's free speech to lie to you about the harmful effects. And because, like, the industry has spent 80 years repeating the same lies. And so obviously that question frightened the living shit out of the industry. They're sending out emails to get people to come in and vote the opposite of the reality. And I only have a couple of dozen people on my show that I've been doing for over a decade. Well, that have been public, right? Anyway, it's not a surprise, but it is desperation. We see the desperation throughout the nuclear industry constantly. Okay, so let's get back on track, hopefully. Well, we're on track, but back on track to what I was hoping to accomplish, which doesn't always happen because, you get great phone calls like we just got, and that's just as important, sometimes more important than the story I want to cover, right? Event to promote, and anybody that called last night or yesterday evening or text today I basically slept all day. I get up, I wander around for a little tiny bit and pass out again. It was absurd. So that's what I mean, it's finally caught up to me. And I apologize, but I still got a long way to go to, just a couple of months I should be pretty good shape apparently, right? 7 stints. And so I'm pretty humbled anyway. Event to promote Japanese race held in London. And I was about to say that 2 years before they removed the restriction last year, Boris Johnson had removed a restriction for baby food and cereal, which is what kids eat a lot of, 2 years before they removed it for the rest of the population. If that's not hatred, what actually is? If that's not evil, really, what is? If that's not a genocide, what actually is? Just because you're not killed immediately don't mean you're not going to die or have to liquidate your assets to help your loved ones or yourself. And this is what I mean by the poll is letting the pro-nuclear tell lies that kill and maim hundreds of millions yearly protected under free speech. Most of the cancer can be traced to the radioactive fallout from decades of releases. Most of Alzheimer's and dementia and autism, diabetes and Down syndrome, heart problems, liver, lung, respiratory, lung cancer in particular. They tell you radon is why 50% of the planet dies from lung cancer. No, it's the plutonium burns a hole through your lung. And if you're a kid, it burns a hole through your lung. It sequesters in your bones where it mutates to stem cells as you grow up. But there's 1,800 diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. It's not just cancer, right? The event came as the British government scrapped in June last year its import restrictions on some Japanese foods from the nuclear wasteland itself. Now, we kind of covered this in the last show, but it's such an important story, I wanted to cover it again. It's disgusting. And this is what we see now. When you look at the industry, you'll see this everywhere if you actually pay attention. This is on a constant thing. Japanese beef and sake have been promoted, and we want to sell rice, Japan's staple food. Well, why doesn't Japan eat it? Further, in overseas markets, well, if it's Japan's staple food, why are you trying to give it away for dirt cheap? Is it because it's deadly? It's lethal? It sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, and it haunts you for the rest of your life. It destroys your quality of life, particularly your children. And just because you're not purposely buying Japanese food, they're shipping it to other countries where they're relabeling it to ship it into your country if you have restrictions. It's sweet and puffy and elastic, said the monster from London. Forgot to mention the word deadly and genocidal for some reason. How convenient. Cecilia Vega keeps showing up, don't she? Here's Cecilia Vega.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool.
She's 34 there. She's pretending that she's in this building way, way above it. She's now a White House press correspondent. I notice almost every video that I mention her in will get heavily censored. She's an actual monster. She's a million times worse than Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, and the rest of them combined. There is no excuse to do what she done. She's a real-life monster. This showed up yesterday. Huron-Kinloss received $2 million in funding. This is a farming community right alongside of where the Canadian genocide machine known as Nuclear Waste Management Organization, who's probably the one spamming me tonight, by the way, where the Canadian Nuclear Waste Management Organization has $28 billion 18 years ago. They're the actual industry, by the way, that created the waste in the first place, and they're in charge. Now, they only want to put it in a place where there's no resistance, they said. But it has to be in your community in the middle of prime farmland. They brought 1,500 acres of prime farmland in Bruce County a couple of years ago. And they want all the farmers to keep farming while they're repackaging the waste for whatever it is, like 100 years of shipment there. And they have to open it up when it gets there, repackage it, which means, first off, everything is vented on the way there. And so is the Huron-Kinloss area. This is mostly farmland. You know, it's one of the bread baskets of central Canada. And everybody's going to get poisoned. And you can't see it or smell it or hear it or taste it or feel it or touch it or perceive it. And so you get lulled into this complacency. They gave them $2 million. And council passed a bylaw to accept what they call free $2 million with no obligations, they said. But I left a comment. $2 million free money with no obligations is not considered a bribe, but it's a bribe. It's a 100% bribe. Must be nice to go giving away $1 million here and $1 million there and $2 million there and $10 million here for something that won't be built for the next 40 years on top of that. But to get their consent, it's about causing a divide on top of that. All nuclear waste is repackaged at the site. Everything is vented. That means constant radioactive fallout forever, basically. There is 1,800 diseases, because radiation never goes away. You can't destroy energy, right? There is 1,800 diseases from radiation fallout, not just cancer. And I felt obligated to leave a comment because I find stuff like this offensive. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization has no concept or no actual proof that they know how to manage nuclear waste. There's nobody on the planet can do it. Canada claims they can coat the cast that they're going to use in, what is it? It's like 1/10 of an inch of copper, and that will protect it for 1 million years. It doesn't work that way. They're using, 6 feet of steel in these reactors, 6 feet thick. And the Wigner effect, the gamma shines, the X-rays, the neutron bursts, destroys that permanently and radiates it. But yet you're supposed to believe that a tenth of an inch of copper is going to protect you. It's very disappointing. And when you look at that area, that's a lot of fresh water. It's on Lake Huron, isn't it? It's got 7,000 population there. Yeah, it's on Lake Huron, which these are major water, freshwater repositories, aquifers. When they join them all together, Lake Superior and the rest of them, because they're all connected, that's the biggest freshwater repository on the entire planet, I believe, or the second biggest. Visitors are taking a keen interest during Farmers' Day. This is one of the most frightening things imaginable. Farmers' Day at the Nuclear Institute of Agriculture. Nuclear Institute of Agriculture. I just want to show you the irony of that statement, because there's some serious irony going on in that one. Why are almost all nuclear power plants surrounded by farms? And dumps, of course. And they know that food sucks up radiation. We have an absurd amount of documentation. We know how dangerous it is at 50 becquerels a kilogram. And so 50 becquerels, like, think about what I'm really talking about. It's such a tiny number. Okay, so you can put 2 million atoms, which is a becquerel per atom, a pulse of energy at the speed of light every second, forever. That could radiate 50 feet away, by the way, in every direction. So you can put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. But 50 of them going into children will cause irreversible heart damage. The lies, the propaganda, the deceit, the deception, it's not tenable. It's not sustainable anymore. It's time to say, you have an obligation. You're obligated, not just because of constitutions of America or Bill of Rights in Canada or Magna Cartas in the United Kingdom, but as a human, as the steward of 8 million species. You're the steward, not some shit for brain fake organizations like Greenpeace. These are controlled opposition. You've been lulled into complacency, and it's costing you everything. And most people can't perceive it. They've been brought up and regurgitated Spider-Man and the Hulk and the Simpsons all their life, and they can't disconnect. They refuse to acknowledge. They're incapable of saying no to propaganda. They thrive in the propaganda. That's their world. It's not their fault. They've been socially engineered since the day they were born. So when you see how food is, they have endless studies, millions and millions. There's 4.3 million studies a year, by the way, and nothing has been studied more than man-made anthropogenic radioactive fallout. Then the question is, why are almost every single nuclear power plant and nuclear waste site, nuclear dumps, surrounded by farms? Well, the answer is actually really obvious. It's to poison you, to murder you, to exterminate you in increments. Because you can't see it or smell it or taste it. You become complacent and vulnerable. And particularly your children are 100 times more vulnerable. And the female species, of all species, the females, are 4 times more vulnerable again than the male species. And so you sterilize all the insects, all the birds, all the animals and mammals in increments over 80 years. What do you really think the outcome of that's going to be? Let's get back to where we left off here. And it's just right here, I believe, yeah. Oh, right there. It's just, the nuclear industry is the very last people you want near your food, and they dominate it. It's terrifying when you see the word farmers now reliant, because they're so complacent, they're so brainwashed, they're so brain dead, on something like the Nuclear Institute of Agriculture, that's India. And India is pioneering in poisoning people directly. There's been a off-site fire, there's been a fire at the Y12 Oak Ridge National Laboratories fuel production facility. I'm trying not to scream, so I might sound like I'm laughing, but this is a terrifying story. Let's get into this one. This has happened, came out yesterday, I believe, or last night. Officials were quick to assure the public, as they always are. The word official should be illegal when it comes to nuclear. There is no such thing as an official. There's a scumbag. We're quick to assure the public, to manipulate the public. The incident was contained. You can't contain radiation. And that the public does not need to worry about any impact off-site. That's an interesting statement, off-site. Now, we've been covering this for years and years and years and years. They have a folder or an envelope. And if there's an accident, they open the envelope, and the envelope is tell the media that everything is good. Give the media lots of advertisement. Give them vacations, throw money at them, they're on your side, keep them on your side, and tell the public nothing. The facility hasn't released much information. It's a super important story because this building has been around since the 40s, so it's a legacy Manhattan Project building and site. It's built on one of the biggest aquifers in that part of the country that feeds water to the major cities and tens of thousands of farms. The industry is very well organized in exterminating us, I must admit. If you live by, and nobody should live nearby, well, first off, this facility shouldn't exist. Second off, you shouldn't live, at least the closest, accidentally, that you should live is 100 miles. It doesn't mean you're safe, but it's way better being within that 100-mile constant radioactive fallout zone. Response is being directed by the Consolidated Nuclear Security. Every time I hear the word nuclear security, I think of demons. I think of real-life monsters. I think of scumbags and idiots and morons and inbreeds in particular. And the National Nuclear Security Administration, whose entire legacy is predicated upon deceit and deception and dishonesty. According to Y12, and why would anybody, how can you trust a legacy Manhattan Project that admitted to dumping it in all the rivers and estuaries and lakes? Because back in those days, they said they had no technology to store it. Guess what? They got no technology today. What do you think they've been doing ever since? Around 200 morons who work in the building were evacuated along with employees in adjacent buildings. And it's building 92112. We've covered that building probably 60 times over the last decade. It's listed on the Department of Energy website as a uranium processing building built in 1945. And what that means is radiation is permeated into the structure, every facet of that infrastructure, from absurd releases for almost 80 years. The building shouldn't exist because it's so contaminated. And look at the desperation in the poll tonight. That's actual desperation. To vote yes to genocide. You really do got to be something stupid to participate in the industry, and the evidence is always overwhelming of how stupid these people actually are, and how hateful they are. They just hate everybody on this planet. They hate every species. They hate every whale. They hate every animal and every insect, and despise puppies. They like to murder the puppies. The puppies are used for nuclear experiments. Built in 1945. Material involved in the fire was a compound of uranium. It's a uranium fuel production facility. They're probably making mixed oxide fuel in that particular facility. There's 3 facilities in the United States. Even though it's illegal, there's still 3 government facilities that make the mixed oxide. And because the fabled small modular reactor industry is dependent upon a highly enriched uranium fuel, very, very high enriched weapons grade fuel, these are maybe the only facility that is capable of producing is the Y-12. And that's the building. And these are massive facilities, by the way. The first priority in a situation like this, according to the Y-12, is deceit, dishonesty, lies, and deception. It's a poster child for a dysfunctional nuclear weapons complex. Nuclear weapons complex. And look at this, Robert Alvarez. How many times I've done entire presentations on how actual evil he is, and yet he's pretending to be the checks and balances. And this is stories from the Union of Unconcerned Scientists, which is created by the Manhattan Project scientists themselves. Yeah, they're evil, but they're not too bad, Dana. No, scumbag, they're bad. They're insidiously bad. I think they have around 5,000... Oh, actually, I got it here. 5,700 employees. They got 35,000 acres. They got a dump site there, and they're on the biggest aquifer in Oak Ridge. Like, it screams evil every time you look at these types of facility. This is a little disturbing. This is a game that's meant to appeal to children. Nuclear plant. Right, to manipulate them like Spider-Man, like the Hulk. Exceptionally good at doing it, by the way. Nuclear plant tycoon codes. Trying to teach children that nuclear is good and you can make a lot of money and you can be rich so they can grow up and be degenerate morons. Useful idiots for the disgusting... I mean, the nuclear industry constantly targets children. It's a constant... They're constantly in the schools. If there's any kind of sports that's for children, the nuclear industry will show up and have a booth there to promote nuclear. It's absurd. They have complete control over every facet of our lives. There's no functional resistance out there. This is the only program in history to do an educational program. And I've been assaulted constantly for over a decade. Ever since I went public, I've been under siege. And I kid you not, years and years and years of research expeditions, I was stalked, attacked, I've been shot at, I've been beat up, I've been viciously vilified, I've been arrested repeatedly, I've been demonized and vilified constantly, daily. There's sites that are dedicated to attacking me. And, I didn't do nothing wrong. I'm not a bad person, for being honest, and there's no way the industry is going to get rid of me. And by doing what they're doing to me, they made sure I will never go away. I will do this till the very end of my life. I just got 7 stints, so that might be a long time, actually. But they made sure I'm not going away. When they came in and spammed my poll tonight, they guarantee you I'll never go away. They just reinforce that I will never go away because you do stuff like this to me. And what? I got 31 people on my site, on my show. And I'm such a danger that they got to come in and spam the living shit out of me. There is nothing else on the planet that compares to how ridiculously evil the nuclear industry actually is. There's nothing comes close to it. Till then, check out our guide on nuke simulator codes, another game based on defending your nuke base. And when you look at the pictures, do you think that's going to appeal to a teenager? No. Do you think it's going to appeal to a child under 10 years of age? Absolutely. targeting children under 10 years of age to make them complacent at that age. So when they grow up, they're unable to rationalize reality when it comes to nuclear. We see it constantly, everywhere. Japan seeks a G7 endorsement on discharge of Fukushima treated water. You can't treat radioactive water. That's been established a very long time ago. The filter has become so radioactive you can never get near it again. And that saved water going through the filter is 2 sieverts per liter, and so 2 liters is a lethal dose when you walk past it. The filter after an hour is thousands of sieverts. You can never get near the building to change the filter. And the water that's going to go through it at 2 sieverts per liter will come out the other side at 10 sieverts per liter forever. You can't filter it. You can put 2 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. You can't filter it. You have to filter the water. The water can't go through the filter because the atoms are so small, right, that you can't contain it, see? So claiming you can filter it is absolutely absurd. Not only that, let me explain. Now, they're talking about the G7, where you got a couple of, you got a dozen people basically, a couple from each country, making decisions that you never gave them permission to do. How the hell do we ever get into... That's because of the disgusting United Nations that's not supposed to exist, which is a corporation. Hang on. I'll explain it to you about what we're talking about on the tanks. I already showed you a couple of models earlier. The planet was covered in 19 days in radioactive fallout. Do you really think the ocean got away from it? Are you really that gullible? You think the ocean never got contaminated? Is there really anybody that stupid left on the planet? Let me make it easy for you anyway. There's such a thing as easy. I have a playlist dedicated to the tanks, by the way. Nothing but documentation, nothing but facts. Facts you're not going to find anywhere else. That's probably the most terrifying statement. Almost there. Here we go. Okay, so there's a couple of things to the tanks you got to understand. It's not very complicated if you're honest. It's only complicated when you're not honest. Where were we to? Did I miss one? Yeah. Bear with me. I cut that off, did I? Okay, here we go. That's got to go down to... I lost track of where that's supposed to go. That's okay. All right, here we go. We got it this time. That's self-explanatory, I hope. So, 2013 August, Japan had 1,000 tanks. You know how many tanks they got today? 1,000 tanks. The tanks were built to manipulate you and trick you and deceive you and make you complacent. Don't forget the name Mari Yamaguchi, by the way. She's the cover story. We've been covering her for over a decade, 12 years actually. 2014, again, Mari Yamaguchi, they had 1,200 tanks. It's interesting because they only got 1,000 tanks today. In 2017, they had 900 tanks. By the way, go ahead and try to walk with both of your heels on the ground. And feet and toes on the ground. Why are they posing it? I don't know why they I think it's photoshopped. I don't know why they did. Now remember, they're walking on steel plates, right? Fukushima will have to dump the radioactive water 2019. And Justin McCurry is a disgusting parasite who we've covered many, many times for the nuclear industry. Coastal nuclear plants commonly dump water 2017 was 1,000 tanks. 2019, 21 rather. The last one was 2019. 2021, 1,000 tanks. 2022, 1,000 tanks. 2023, 1,000 tanks. So 2013, 1,000 tanks. 2023, 1,000 tanks. How many tanks did you build in the last 12 years, Dana? Oh, that's right, none. You can fill up all the tanks 6 times a day just from a single reactor, by the way. So 2014, the Areva system, which was France's water filtration system, in 2014 August, didn't work. You know why? Because the filters is a lethal dose. You can never get near it again. They were built to constrict you, same as the tanks. In 2014, in April, the ALP system has yet to function. Well, you're talking almost 4 years after, or 3 years after, over 3 years after the meltdown started. They're pouring water, and the water they're claiming they're pouring is equal, which is 150 tons a day, is what they're saying they're bringing into the tanks. They're filtering it. Half of that gets sprayed back on the reactor, they've been telling you. But it's equal to taking a garden hose, an average household garden hose, 1/2 inch, 3/8 even, and splitting it 4 ways. And then each one of them is spraying on a multiple nuclear meltdowns. So when you scrutinize their narrative, what you realize, and they don't even have, what do you mean by we don't have full control of certain parts of the site is lethal doses. So there was no Areva, there was no Siri system, there was no ELP systems that function. They admit, we have the evidence in 2014. So if they were storing it, that's a lethal. If you put the numbers we're talking about, 2.2 sieverts per liter, in these tanks, you're talking about 1.4 million sieverts per tank. It means you can't get on the site. It also means you can't build another tank anywhere. TEPCO says the groundwater bypass operation doesn't work. TEPCO, which shouldn't exist, right? It was nationalized. It was just a corporation. It's not a decommission authority. There's been many calls to remove them because they have no... The reason they got the word TEPCO exist is so you don't blame the real true monster of the nuclear industry. The World Nuclear Association, International Atomic Energy Agency, ERPA, Zanskler, the IPCC, the IPCC, the name it. They got endless organizations at the UN, which is the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned you about. TEPCO needed $1 billion to build a fence. You can't build a fence. You're talking about something where you can put 2 million atoms, anthropogenic man-made deadly atoms. A single one will invoke an autoimmune illness in you in increments over decades. Your body will attack it for the rest of your life with white blood cells, which, by the way, displaces your red blood cells, which carry oxygen and nutrition, which means you're more susceptible because your immune system is compromised, so you're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless and innocuous and benign. TEPCO's ice wall is not meeting expectations. They allegedly had 260,000 people work on an ice wall. You heard me, an ice wall. Not a real wall, but an ice wall. And when you done the math on the money that was spent, it worked out to $1,100 per person if you didn't build an ice wall. The minute you scrutinize anything in the nuclear industry, everything falls apart. Why would you build an ice wall that you get, if something goes wrong, you open the floodgates? Not only that, the ice wall will cause neutron reflection, which means you can have a chain reaction against the ice wall and destroy the so-called infrastructure. No, it's a fable. Why wouldn't you build a real wall? Because it's all based upon deceit and dishonesty, right? Japan has been slammed yesterday for loosening test standards on Fukushima radioactive water. Well, first off, they won't let anybody independently test the water, allegedly, that they're storing in the tanks. Second off, why is he wearing gloves if it's filtered? right? Why is he wearing gloves if it's filtered, if it's safe, clean water? They got the word TEPCO. TEPCO, of course, is not supposed to exist. TEPCO should be charged with crimes against humanity, for goodness sakes. The evidence we provide is unassailable documentation. Every show is different. Every show is designed to warn you that this is real. Every show is a desperate cry for you to get your fucking shit together and do something smart for once in your life and get the war against this despicable industry. Excuse the Canadian in me. It shows a bottle of radioactive water from Fukushima power plant has been filtered by the Alps. It just showed you the Alps system couldn't work. If it could have, it would have worked in the first 3 years, right? They can't even take it apart because they turned it on and you can never get near it again. So they cut power to it and walked away. Because some people actually believe the fable, right? So activists from South Korea, which has kept North Korea prisoner now for 70 years, while they lived a great life in South Korea, they isolated and vilified and demonized South Korea, which the United Nations bombed into non-existence. They dropped more bombs than World War I total. And World War II combined, rather. That's what the United Nations done in the 1950s. Like, the system is so dysfunctional, that's the only way it can now exist. It's got so many years of inbreeding of these disgusting parasites looting your countries and then having children and raising them to take over the job so they don't get found out what they actually done and can retire and become disgusting parasites for the rest of their lives. The time at the soil that is stored at the tsunami hit nuclear power plant, they don't store the soil. They store it next door at Okuma and Futaba, where they got over 1 million bags cut open of radioactive, 1-ton bags of radioactive soil cut open. These are ghost towns we're talking about. No-go zones where they brought the radioactive soil, cut it open, they're growing food for sale in it to convince you that everything is hunky-dory. So why did you pick up 30 million 1-ton bags of it? Which, by the way, if you take a 1-ton bag and put it in the back of a 1-ton truck, that's all it can carry, right? Without breaking all the shocks and the leaf springs and everything else. If you stack those trucks bumper to bumper, that's 5 rows of traffic around the planet. That's an absurd amount of nuclear waste. And if you look at Hanford, just one incident already dumped 450 billion gallons into the soil. If you took that and put it in an aquarium, 6 feet wide and 500 feet tall, that's a 500-foot, 6-foot wall of liquid, radioactive, deadly legacy waste wrapped around the entire planet Earth. A 500-foot wall of nuclear waste wrapped around the entire planet was dumped into the Colombian River. And that's just one of the many endless, absurdly endless amount of dumping that all the countries worldwide participated in. At what point are you going to say that's enough? At what point what is it that takes for you to make a stand is the question to anybody new. Not to the regular supporters, obviously, the few dozen that do regularly that follow along and understand the importance. I'm not talking, obviously, to those wonderful souls. But to the random people that come by, to the people that have spammed my poll tonight, you know, do you really think that you're invisible, that your loved ones are invisible, that your children are invisible? Do you really think that they're not going to be affected? Or are you just stupid, like your parents were? Which we're pretty sure that's what it is. South Korea is claiming the water and they got tritium in it. South Korea knows better. South Korea just opened a nuclear plant that was closed for 5 years because of an earthquake. If you want the definition of stupid in South Korea, that was it. You closed the nuclear plant because you had an earthquake for 5 years, and now you're going to open it again? You really think the fault line is never going to reactivate? You really think that You're never going to have a possibility of destroying your own country immediately. It's disappointing, right? Some radioactive nuclides have short half-lives, yeah. Saying iodine-131 has only 8 days, there's 10 half-lives. 80 days, see? By the way, whenever you got iodine-131, there's 10 times more 132 iodine, 30 times more 133 iodine, 31 times more iodine-129 iodines, which are 10 times more, 9 times more effective ionizing radiating thyroid glands than the 131 is, which is extremely effective. And it's not just you, it's every species on the planet that you can't live with it. When the bees go, you go behind it. And guess what? The bees are almost gone. Cesium-134, which has a half-life of 2 years, there's 10 half-lives. And a lot of this will decay to a different isotope, see? Let me show you. Because I can't show you this kind of stuff enough. I can't possibly articulate this stuff enough. Technetium decays to rubidium, but it takes 211,000 years, I'm sorry, for technetium-99. Well, let's see if we can find cesium. There's cesium there. Yeah. So cesium-134, right there. So cesium-134 hang on. Cesium-134 decays, has a half-life of 20 years. And it decays to a stable isotope, which decays down to all these other isotopes. Cesium americium, for instance, 239, has a short half-life, for instance. It has I think it's a couple of days, hang on. Yeah, 11 hours. But then it decays to plutonium. And it has a half-life of 24,000 years. So they'll tell you that, americium only has a half-life of 11 hours. Yeah, but what does it decay into? It decays into a plutonium with a half-life of long past the human experience on this planet, thanks to the nuclear industry. The biggest problem with Japan's discharge plan is the world is pretending that it's never already happened. I'll show you. I don't mind. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to try to rationalize the reality of the deceit and the deception. Here's France's model of radioactive fallout based on 16 days. When the model stops, that's 16 days of radioactive fallout. So 16 days of radioactive fallout covers the entire planet. And they want you to think about something that might happen instead of what actually happened. That's the idea of their fabled story. And they got all the media, the entire media, not a single media on the planet is going to have a descending voice. There's not a single university on the planet that will have a descending voice. There's not a single leader on this entire planet will have a descending voice. If you don't find this program, you'll never hear another narrative. And so how can we have a future and the nuclear industry at the same time? Because you can't. And you can pretend that I'm not right all you want, but that's all you're doing, you're pretending. You're not doing yourself or your loved ones, and you're certainly not doing your children any favor. And South Korea activists, like, how is it that you can't know I exist when I've been at this forever? Well, it's the same way where you see my poll tonight. Do you really think they're spamming my poll because people are not actually paying attention? Do you really think there's only 31 people on my show? Do you really think that for 4 years I had 24,200 subscribers, that I never lost one and I never gained one for 4 years? Do you really think that's possible? Because I'm unbelievably prolific in production of information, right? So you really think I didn't gain a single subscriber in 4 years? But look how revolting they are to come in and spam me, because is letting pro-nuclear tell lies that kill and maim hundreds of millions of people a year, because that's what it is. Each year there's at least 100 million or more that end up with heart attacks, ends up with cardiovascular, ends up with lung and respiratory and pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome, schizophrenia, 1,800 illnesses and diseases from the radiation ingestion, from food and water and air, from the endless, brutally endless emissions. Again, look at this model. Do you really think you escaped the radiation just because you can't perceive it? You didn't. And if everybody spoke out and said, nuclear is no good, we need to find an alternative. A great alternative, by the way, is geothermal. How come you never hear tell us of that? They'll build a big wind farms in your community and torture you, when they can put a geothermal there the size of a small business, and it'll power do the same power. No, the industry is designed to be evil. It has no concept of being a participant in the planet. Its entire history is about how do we destroy everybody in increments. 10 best spots to view cherry blossoms in a nuclear wasteland. And a lot of these were little spots I couldn't find on the map, but here's 7 of them. Fukushima Prefecture is, Koriyama is the last spot you want to be. That's 30 miles away from the nuclear meltdown. Minnesota's right there. Iwate is right here. This is a nuclear wasteland we're talking about. And they want people to go in and put with their children into a nuclear wasteland to see radioactive trees. They excel in being scumbags is one thing we noticed about the pro-nuclear community. They excel. They thrive in being scumbags. That's what they're good at, and that's why they got the job they got. And they know it. Flying saucers to mind controls, 24 declassified military and CIA secrets. First off, the military makes a living by raping and slaughtering. And that's no secret. They built the so-called UFOs just to manipulate you. Like Hanford, when they would have major releases, for instance. Hanford was surrounded by farms, by the way, like cow farms too. And so the cows would get lethal doses. And they would keep an eye on the farms. They knew the wind was blowing towards these farms. They would kill the cows, cut out the organs they wanted to study, and spread rumors with the local newspaper that aliens were killing cows and stealing their organs. But it was actually the nuclear industry. After Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they took a lot of radioactive victims to Oak Ridge National Laboratories, other institutes in the United States, and incinerated their bodies and sniffed it for plutonium and uranium and other isotopes. And we're talking thousands. If you know the real story of the nuclear industry, you would never leave the house without a baseball bat in your hand. MK Ultra, where that's been going on for 1,000 years, these types of projects, right? But they get more sophisticated, and they do it now through the internet and social networking sites and everything else. Every facet of the nuclear industry enforces a reason why you should hate them. That's one thing that we were able to take away. Project Horizon. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole and make with everybody, but... And NASA, of course, gave us the scum of the scum, James Hansen. An absolute blight on humanity. I'll never forgive NASA for that. Why didn't they go to the moon since in the last 40 plus years, 45, 46 years? No country. And the technology they used, even like a smartwatch 10, 20 years ago, had more computing power than they did when they allegedly went to the moon. So there's no excuses not to go to the moon. It's only 3 days away. They go to Mars, they say, but they can't go to the moon for some reason. What do you think that is? Why didn't China go up and put a base on the moon? Why didn't Russia do it? Why didn't America go back? Why didn't other countries go up and land on the moon? And this is the entire legacy of this industry is something you should be ashamed of. There's nothing to be proud of. They have no redeeming qualities whatsoever. That's one thing I can guarantee you. 0 redeeming qualities. Yeah, I'm not going to go down that story because that's another story on Cecilia Vega, who faked being in reactor 4. How can you forgive someone like that? How can you pretend that someone like that is not evil? I can't. This is this absurd story. Taiwan is retreating from nuclear energy, but at what cost? Well, first off, remember, Taiwan has some serious earthquakes. They're one of the last places that should have nuclear reactors, right? Does that look like a good spot to have a nuclear reactor to anybody? Does it? Does anybody really think that's a good place to have nuclear reactors? Is there anybody out there that says, no, they can withstand that? They're like Superman and the Hulk, Dana. So Taiwan said to the natives where they forced the natives onto this group of islands called Orchard Islands. And they went out, I'm not sure if it was the 80s, I think, or the 70s. They said to the natives, we want to put a canning factory on Orchard Island. And the natives were like, great, we're canning salmon and canning fish and stuff like this. They thought it was a great idea, and they would all get a little kickback. He said, sure. And so Taiwan Nuclear Industry built the nuclear waste dump and pretended that it was a canning factory. After Fukushima, Taiwan had over 2,000 students, nuclear students in university, each day spammed the internet that Fukushima was harmless and that it was like a banana and like a potato chip and like walking in sunshine and flying on an airplane and climbing a mountain. 2,000 nuclear students that are now graduated and working in the nuclear industry spent several years trying to cut your throat as students. You really think they're going to give that up? You really think they didn't learn they can get credits and money for being mass murder and genocide monsters? Do you really think that that's the only country that done that? The nuclear industry is evil, period. And that story there about Taiwan is a really good example. Unfortunately, it's such a long story, I'm not going to try to get through it. We're still trying to get back into the swings of things after a terrible experience. I mean, I had 3 heart attacks. I don't know if anybody's experienced. I'm sure lots of people have, but I don't know if anybody here tonight has ever experienced. Actually, I do know for a fact a few people here have experienced heart attacks. It's quite the ordeal. I've had 3, and I just had serious reconstruction surgery on my valves, 7 stents put in. I still got a long way to recover. It's very difficult. But I'm super happy that I'm back home. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here tonight because I didn't really think, I had much hope. It was downhill for the last 4 days for me. And just unbelievably grateful to get back here and have another opportunity to face down this threat to humanity called the nuclear industry. France, I still hear the pro-nuclear community talking about how good France is. 70% of its electricity comes from nuclear. They use that as the poster child for the nuclear industry, when in fact the reactors are all decrepit and old. They were all built at the same time. And now it's coming back to haunt everybody on the planet. Last year they had half the fleet shut down. Over 36 reactors shut down. Because of the Wigner effect, the nuclear bombardment of neutrons and gamma shines and X-rays upon the infrastructure had denigrated it, disenfranchised the atoms, the molecular structure of steel. It breaks it down on the atomic scale. Behind layers of security and a thick cement wall. Well, the La Hague, which is a disgusting fuel processing facility in France, one of several, by the way, has 500 security guards. They don't want a picture leaking out of that place or someone with a Geiger counter on top of that. We have studies showing that it contaminated the entire Arctic from radioactive fallout from the reprocessing. And reprocessing is illegal in Canada and the United States, even though some government agencies are still practicing it. You can't contain it, so you're going to boil the fuel rods at 3,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures in acid and then liberate the isotopes and try to reclaim the hot particles. And they do that with nuclear missiles that are decommissioned, but you can never get rid of the radiation, see? You can take the propellers, the jet motors off the missiles, but you can't decommission the radiation. And what you do in order to reclaim it, so-called, which is, by the way, when it goes through a chain reaction, the atoms are 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. If you put it through a chain reaction again, because that's the intention, it's 2 billion times 2 billion more toxic than industrial poison to everything with replicating. It's an assault. It's a lethal threat to everything with replicating cells. Beyond layers of security in a thick cement wall, a team of welders. Like, first off, you're going into a neutron bombardment zone. There is no safe doses. Just that environment, your body is going to be bombarded with, the radioactive fatigued metal that they're trying to fix. They're going to cut it. The welders they're not nuclear educated. And if they were, then they would never go inside there. And they can't do the job anyway. They can fake it and make it work for a few more years, but then it's going to have even bigger problems. The disgusting, despicable, revolting World Health Organization, also known as United Nations, which has how many subsidy companies again? It seems like an endless amount, including like UNICEF, for goodness sakes. Why would you put a military-industrial complex in charge of the victims for? So they can cover up their crimes against humanity. Who, by the way, trades sex for food with the victims, right? That's what UNICEF's legacy actually is. The starving children got to have sex with the United Nations soldiers in order to get their hands on food that is paid for by donations from around the world who don't know any better. The World Health Organization has a new list of medication. There is no medicine to remediate radiation. You can chelate some of it out of your, remove some of it from your body with some certain techniques, but very few people have the skill or the ability to actually pull that off. The radiation, the physical atom sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones, and you're going to be irradiated for the rest of your life. Hi everybody, hope everybody's doing good. And so this was basically a tune-up show, so I apologize. I know I'm not up to my usual antiques. I still got a little bit of the fire left into me. But it's been a pretty difficult day for me today. And tonight is going to be the same, I can tell already, and then tomorrow. And I'm not going to push myself, because that's not smart. The priority now is for me to get healthy. And we're looking at a couple of months, but I'll be back 5 days a week. I just won't be pushing myself too hard. But I have to keep the pressure on the industry, right? I have to be here regularly. Even if nobody watches the show, I got to be here as often as possible to try to keep pressure on the industry. And with just a couple of dozen people in my show, the industry spammed the living shit out of me tonight. Is letting the pro-nuclear, degenerate, revolting scumbags tell lies that kill and maim hundreds of millions yearly protected under free speech. And the idea of these polls is for the newcomers that are happening by the show, trying to figure out what the hell is going on here, for instance. And these are typically, I generally, in my head, I'm targeting policymakers and investors from any country worldwide, right? And the idea of the poll is because, each show got a different poll, but the poll will make you hopefully question nuclear. You're like, wait a second, nuclear is harming hundreds of millions of people a year? And it does that through the radioactive fallout. You can't protect yourself. There's 1,800 illnesses. Right? And just that alone is enough to give the average person that's intelligent and hasn't been, completely complacent through Hollywood and The Simpsons and Spider-Man and the Hulk, to think and wait a second. It forced him to ask the question, can that be true? And if so, how bad is it really? I don't make anything up. I don't misrepresent anything. I don't over-exaggerate or exaggerate anything. I don't because you don't need to. You can't. The inner is so evil. It's hard to keep up with how actual evil it is. It's almost impossible to articulate how evil the industry actually is. I'm pretty good at it. I wanted to do a video. I was thinking about it for tonight. I was going to do a video of how many ways they're poisoning you. And I'd have to do like a 6 to 10 series. 6 to 10 1.5, 2 hour shows to try to articulate how evil the industry actually, and how, because I can, right? I have it gathered up over all these years. I have an absolute absurd amount of documentation. And when I say the World Health Organization, aka United Nations, is a scumbag, I can prove it. I don't have to, but I can prove it. I deserve the ability to say that without always having to back up. But I do these types of shows. These are the hardest shows to do, the visual shows. I typically provide documentation for most of the assertions because it's an educational program. And that's the best way to educate the population, is to be consistent and provide the documentation, right? bear with me for a second. I got a little video I'm going to play for you for a bit of entertainment. And it'll give you an idea of my recovery. It's going to get down to minus 30 here tonight. And I can't shovel snow anymore. Certainly not this winter. And I can't depend on other people to do it for me. And so this was last night's picture of my place. The day before, I went and bought a snowplow
February
for
21st. Still got a month and a half of snow.
So that was 2 days ago.
So I bought...
See the green grass that time? Because it rained that day, right?
I bought a snowplow for the quad because I can't shovel anymore, and I can't expect other people to show up and do it. It's not fair, obviously.
And so I went and bought the snowplow. And you can see yesterday afternoon, it took 2 days to put it together. I had help from a super nice man who helped me put it all together. And that was last night. That was the first time using the plow. That's out in front of my front door last night. And I got a little video because I wasn't sure of the quality. But it works, anyways, what I'm trying to say, right? I plowed the whole driveway. I plowed all the way back into my shed with a lot of the equipment into it. I've done a great job. I had to do it yesterday because it's going to get to minus 30 today, and everything that was on the ground would have frozen into ice, and it'd be really hard to use the plow if I didn't break it last night. So that worked. I obviously, my Hummer still looks like that today because I took the good out of me, but it still wasn't too bad. At least I can do it. So super happy about that. And so James Lucid donated $200 on the last show. Bless your heart, James, man. Well, and Stephen Young donated $50 today. Hi, Stephen, if you're out there. I think I seen you out there in the comments section earlier. And so that took a nice chunk of the sting out of buying that. But I can't walk a plow. I can't buy like a snowblower right now. I can't do that kind of exercise. And I felt I can get somebody else to come by and use the plow if I had it there, right? And if I couldn't do it myself. But I done it last night. It was really easy. I got power steering on that, right? So it was actually nice to get out and get all that fresh air. And I had a great hand in putting it together. It was actually pretty complicated to get it together. All those air tools that we bought last year made it. It wouldn't even be together now if we didn't have those air tools, because you just hang on to it till it's done, right? It was fantastic. I mean, it was fantastic. Because I could never have used a socket and just done it by hand. So, wow, that was the first major test we had. It actually worked 100%. Of course, we knew that, but it was nice to do it. And there's a lot to putting that together. I had to go to the welder yesterday morning to get an extension, a 22-inch extension put on the plow so we can mount it properly. And that all worked out. No, I have no restrictions on me, right? But I'm not picking up anything over 5 pounds. Like I say, I had help. And you know me better than that, folks. You know I'm not going to take a chance, right? But we had to come up with a solution because I can't I can't deal with the snow. And I would have done this before. I had the heart attacks, but I was so unhealthy I couldn't do anything. Before the snow had fell, right, this year. I was intending to have the plow. And that makes all the difference in the world. So I can handle any volume of snow coming my way, and it's coming my way, believe me. So super happy about that. I thought everybody would get a bit of a kick out of that. When you look at that last night, get a better picture. It's hard to appreciate how much snow was there yesterday. There's no way I can clean that, see? And I can't be locked in my house. I can't depend on neighbors to randomly show up and do it. That's not fair. And so it's done now. You can yell at me all you like, but it's done. And I feel good. Yeah, I'm worn out. I got a long way to go for recovery, but the fact that I'm able to do something like that, I'm thinking now, my brain is finally working again like it should be. So in a couple of months, we'll be back into the research, starting research expeditions this summer. I got lots of plans in the pipeline now again, which I gave up on a few months ago. I kind of retired, right, from research expeditions. I'm not going to be taking the quad on research expeditions this winter because I need a couple of months to recover, right? That's the first time I had the quad out in probably 4 months, is it? 5 months or something. That tells you how sick I've been, right? Okay, so Dana Nasana says he got 10 feet of snow around his house. Yeah, well, we got big piles of snow. We had rain 2 days ago. If it had been snow, you wouldn't have got out the door. It would have been covered our door. It rained. We're talking absurd rain for about 15 hours because we had a lot of snow, folks. It was piled up everywhere when I got into the hospital. The roads were still covered in ice and snow. And then 2 days ago, we had it warmed up to 7 degrees 2 days ago, the day I went and bought the plow. And the next day, yesterday, we had a snowstorm. And now the temperatures are diving, and it's going to be like that for the next couple of weeks, the long-range forecast. So pretty awesome that we pulled that off. Because that was the only thing that would have me stressed out, right? Everything else I can deal with. Okay, good night, everybody. Hugs for everybody. Let's close the poll down here in a minute. Close the poll down, call it a night. And my eyesight seemed to be affected by the heart attacks. Which surprised me, actually, right? And we'll come in and catch the comments tonight or tomorrow. Let's close the poll down. We got spammed really good tonight by the nuclear industry. They hate a real poll like this. Is letting the pro-nuclear tell lies that kill and maim hundreds of millions yearly protected under free speech. And it should be a crime to tell the lies. And it should be life in jail minimum for telling the lies they're telling the population in the universities and in the newspapers. It's absurd that they're able to get away with that. It's absurd that it's not a crime. It really is. So we appreciate everybody participated in the polls. And shame on the nuclear industry for coming in and spamming me. With so few people on my shows, why would they conceive it as a threat? Because nobody's ever had this conversation before. Nobody's ever ran an educational program before. If you want to support me, there's links at the very bottom of the description. There's only 2. But the site, my site, the second link, for instance, will take just about any kind of card. Apple card, Google cards, it'll take Xbox type cards, it'll take cards from different countries, even bank cards. And we can't do it without your support. And so, if you can, it's greatly appreciated. There's also, the first link is a PayPal donation. And we've been doing this now for a decade, and there's never been an issue. So, if you can donate, now's a good time to be doing it. And because we're the only show out there, it's more important than it ever has been. Hugs for everybody. God bless everybody. You have a great night, a great weekend. We're going to try to come back Sunday. If I don't show up Sunday, it'll be Monday. I would imagine I'll show up Sunday. It might not be as long as this show, right? Good night, everybody. Have a great night. Great weekend. Thank you for finding the time, energy, and the effort. We'll see everybody on the next show. We're going to try to get back up to speed as soon as we can, but again, I'm still doing a recovery, so it's not easy. God bless everybody. Take care. We'll see you soon. Yeah, good night, everybody. If you made it this far, don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Have a great night. We'll see everybody on the next show. Take care.